So, Leafs Nation, what do you want to talk about? Seems like there's something big that's about to go down tomorrow, but everybody knew about it probably for the past couple of days, at least the last 48 hours. What's going on? This is Offside Hockey Talk. We're proudly brought to you by our friends over at Boxing Rock Brewing Co. Check out their Puck Off Lagerdale. It's the big beer for the big podcast, and you may notice a unfamiliar face among us, and that is the man right there, the man with a plan. Auddie James. Hopefully, I'm not butchering that.
No, you got it. You nailed it. I've been called way worse. How's it going, boys?
Nice to meet you, Auddie. How you doing today?
Hey, you know what? I'm great. I guess first and foremost, I should probably you guys get a lot of Leafs listeners, obviously.
Yep.
I should first and foremost thank whoever's watching, whoever's listening, for accepting me in this brief playoff run as an honorary member of Leafs Nation. It was a short but sweet stay. And I think without getting into too much, I know we've got a lot on the plate today. This relationship between Flames and Leafs fans is only just starting to heat up. If I could use a terrible pun to describe that one, but yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it, fellas.
Yeah, the takes they're absolutely a flying. Before we jump into talking about Treliving and the Leafs and the Flames and all that good stuff. Mm-hmm. Let's get a little background on you. You got a little show right now. What is that called? How did you get into it?
Yeah.
And what do you like doing behind the mic?
Yeah. So the show that I'm on is it's part of SDPN Sports. It's called Game Over Calgary. It's a Calgary Flames post-game show live on the SDPN Sports YouTube channel. So myself and former Sportsnet 960 radio host and all-around good guy Peter Klein, we co-host the Calgary show. But yeah, it's just a post-game show where we talk about everything that happened in the game, and lots of cool guests come on, and we get the privilege to talk to some pretty cool people from other markets as well. So it's been good. And how I got into it is it's kind of funny. My start in this crazy sports media world started in just making YouTube videos. I was a small hockey YouTuber for the better part of 5 years, just putting out content that I like talking about and people evidently like to listen to. So it was kind of a perfect marriage there, in the sense that I was able to talk about things and voice my opinion, which you'll come to realize I like to do. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll know that it's an all too common theme on my Twitter page. But just got into making videos and had some opportunities at other networks and other places, and it just so happened that when SDPN Sports started taking off, Andrew Berkshire, who runs all of our Game Over stuff, and he does Game Over Montreal as well, he posted a posting for hiring some hosts for Calgary and for Edmonton and Toronto for the playoff run last year. And so I thought, you know what, why not just put my name in the hat, kind of see what happens. It's probably a long shot. Lots of people apply to these things, especially in Toronto, given the history with with Steve, Adam, and the boys, and Jesse and the boys there. But yeah, so I just threw my name in the hat, and one thing kind of led to the other. I got a phone or a Zoom invite on my lunch break one day, and there's Andrew and Jesse and Adam grilling me about why I should be the co-host of Game Over Calgary.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and then it was pretty bizarre. Like, they talked about it on the SDP after they announced all the hosts, and they're like, yeah, and Auddie was he was in his car on his lunch break at work. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of exactly how the story went. And then exactly, to make a long story short, one thing led to the other, and I've been blessed to be doing this for 2 seasons now, and it's been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed it.
That's wicked. What platforms can we watch you on? Is that on YouTube? Is it Twitch? And it's through Game Over. Is that correct?
Yeah. It's on the SDPN Sports YouTube channel.
Right.
They go live just within 5 to 10 minutes after the final whistle goes or final buzzer goes. But yeah, so far right now it's just on YouTube for the live portion of it. But then immediately once we finish the show, we upload it as a podcast for people going in on their commute the next morning who want a quick game recap or whatever the case may be. So, yeah, on your every podcast catcher you could or pod platform you could find and live on YouTube.
Go make sure you check out Auddie. I know Clark Monroe is a big fan of yours, so he wanted to make sure he said hi to you tonight. I know he's lurking right now. He's working behind the screens.
He says you're a noted Leafs fan. Can you explain what that means? Like you were a Leafs fan during this playoff run? Is that what we're understanding here?
Yeah, I don't want to give out my full secret as to why I did it. Actually, I will.
You lost the bet.
No, I was just trying. Like I always think of different ways to like engage fan bases and do things like that. And one of the things I thought of was, well, the Flames aren't in it this year. Let's see, let's find a popular team to hop on the bandwagon. And obviously, given the hand that feeds at SDPN Sports, I figured it was pretty safe to jump on the Leafs bandwagon. First of all, it was fun to actually have a team to kind of follow in the playoffs, even though you've got no horse in the race.
Yeah.
So it was cool to like be a part of that and get engage with as many Leafs fans as I was able to. But yeah, it was mostly just like hey, how can I get more eyes on the show and kind of like promote that by also engaging in some fun with another fan base. And honestly, man, it was a lot of fun. Like it was super cool to be an honorary Leafs fan for a few weeks there. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of it.
Hey, we absolutely loved having you along with Leafs Nation. I remember seeing your tweet about it, and I think me and Clark and a few others jumped on it to welcome you with open arms.
Yeah.
I wish you went a little longer.
Yeah, me too.
It was fun. You got to experience the second round with us and see some of the elation of us Leaf fans who've been waiting since the early 2000s to see that second round. But why we got you here today?
Yeah,
is because of the jerseys behind you, your knowledge of the Flames. Obviously, a fan knows what goes on there. I want to get your instant gut check reaction to Brad Treliving being named a general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and why do some Leafs fans have it wrong right now that this is a bad move? I've got my own takes, but I want to hear yours.
Yeah, it's honestly like, first of all, what you're getting in Brad outside of everyday hockey op stuff is just a genuinely great guy. You talk to anybody who worked for Brad here in Calgary and they echo the same sentiment that he's just a genuinely fantastic person to work with, to work for, to be around. He just elates such great a great vibe and aura. Just a good, super humble, down-to-earth guy. And I've had the privilege to talk to him a couple times, and he's always been great. He's just a fantastic dude. What you're getting as the GM is a guy who is pretty great with RFA negotiations, knows his players, good at building those relationships and getting those RFAs signed, I guess, is the meat and potatoes of it. An excellent drafter. I think his drafting is kind of underrated or overlooked by a lot of people. I think he's really good at finding gems in later rounds, and that's maybe a testament to Calgary's scouting as well.
Let's pause there for just 1 second.
Yeah,
one thing I want to drill down on is that the scouting and the player development. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a lot floating around lately, and there's been some prominent names around the Flames who cover the Flames who said that maybe he didn't get the resources or have the tools in his toolbox to be able to not only build the department he wanted, but get the staff and the people that he wanted to take that to the next level. Now in Toronto, he'll have that.
Yep.
But is there any credence, do you think, to that, or is that just people blowing smoke right now?
No, I think that's factual. I think maybe it's a little overblown in the sense that, like, I think he had what he needed with what he was given. Follow along with me as best you can with that with that statement. But given, obviously a much smaller market, budgets are different here than they are in Toronto. Obviously, there's a lot more money to spend back in the motherland. But I'm from Ontario, so it's.
I'm from Ontario too, even though I live out east.
I have to know why you're a Flames fan at some point.
I'll get into it.
Sure.
It's a funny story. But yeah, back to that, like I think in Calgary he did have, obviously Chris Snow was big on helping with that, and Brad Pascal, and obviously our new GM Craig Conroy. They did have the resources, and they had good scouts, and they had a good scouting process, and maybe that's why he was able to find gems in later rounds. Guys like look at Dustin Wolf, who's taken the AHL by storm. He should be, between the pipes and on any NHL roster at some point, right? 7th round pick, right? Look at guys like Rasmus Anderson and Andrew Mangiapane, taken in the 4th round, I believe, right? Just good picks in later rounds, and that's something the Flames have been notorious for. They know where they're going to get their guys. They'll take advantage of, if a guy's going to fall at 67 and they have 64, they're going to trade down to 67 and get another asset on top of the guy that they want. Like Brad is a very, very smart guy, and recency bias will tell you to go look at what happened with Matthew Tkachuk. Go look at what happened with Johnny Gaudreau. A lot of people throwing Sam Bennett's name out here, and that's fair given, again, recency bias. He's in the Stanley Cup final with Matthew Tkachuk. But unless you're in this market and you're following along as closely as a lot of people here are, I just have a problem with some of the people who are spewing this information that they think is correct regarding Gaudreau, regarding Tkachuk, regarding by some I don't know how Sam Bennett is getting thrown in this conversation as well. I'll take you back to the whole Sam Bennett thing. Was not a very good Calgary Flame. Was their highest draft pick in franchise history, and just didn't end up panning out. Cried the blues that he wasn't given the opportunity. When he was given the opportunity, just didn't run with it. So a change of scenery was needed. That was bound to happen, and Brad did what he could there. I think he got like a 5th round pick from Florida for him. So that's whatever. Water under the bridge. Johnny Gaudreau, let's clear some. If I may, can I clear some air on?
Oh, you go right ahead and clear the air. Like I said in my video today too. If you have a guy like Johnny Gaudreau, compared to Austin Matthews, are you just going to trade that player away, or are you going to take an extra year of that player and try to sign him? I think that's what you're going to try to take the run at.
Well, and the Flames were in a bit of a pickle with Gaudreau, and look, maybe there's some partial blame to be thrown in Brad's way with them not being able to lock him up before the last year of his deal, which it's very few and far between that a pending UFA is going to sign in that final year anyways. They usually take the bet on yourself route.
Yep.
And Gaudreau, he was pretty transparent that they weren't going to engage in contract negotiations during the season, which is fine. And thank God they didn't, because he had a hell of a season. The Flames were favorites to win the cup. Obviously didn't pan out with that 2nd round exit to the Oilers. But the Gaudreau thing was interesting. Media here were screaming that he was going to go back east and try to go closer to home, get to the Eastern Conference, somewhere closer to home. For years leading up to his final year here in Calgary. And let me pose the question to you guys. You guys remember the year the Flames had that year, 2 years ago. We're only one full actual season removed from that year. Johnny Gaudreau was putting up monster numbers, the best line in hockey with Matthew Tkachuk and Elias Lindholm, next to maybe the perfection line in Boston. I know that stings Leaf fans. I'm sorry. But the perfection line in Boston was probably the next closest line in comparison. Do you trade that guy at the deadline? Like, does that make sense to you to try to recoup an asset when you're on a playoff push and this guy's having the best year of his career?
Not at all. No,
doesn't make sense, right? You keep that guy. You go on that run and you try to take a run at him in the offseason and try to throw the bag at him. And obviously that's the route the Flames took. A lot of people are blaming Brad for him not coming back. If you followed the story closely, it was up until it was literally like half an hour before he became, I'm being maybe a little bit dramatic with the numbers there, but it was to the nth hour of unrestricted
right
free
up to the last minute.
Literally, the story goes he was ready to sign with the Flames and went for a drive with his wife Meredith, and I will not stand for any slander towards his wife for maybe influencing his decision. That's a family thing through and through.
Yep.
Where you're going to spend the next 7 years of your life and raise your young family. I will not stand for Meredith Gaudreau slander whatsoever. So if anybody's going to come at me with that, they can just zip it. But the story goes, he went for a drive with Meredith and came back and had to tell the Flames that, he was going to test free agency. And that's when, we heard some teams like Philly possibly in the mix, and then Columbus sweeps in. And that's where he ends up. So to say that Brad didn't try, to bring it back to Treliving, to say that Brad didn't try, I urge anybody who's listening or watching this right now, if you don't think this ate Brad Treliving up, go watch his press conference the day free agency opened. Go watch the look of defeat on his face. He looked like he was going to cry. Like it looked like someone had run over his dog, to put it morbidly, but it looked like the sky had completely fallen and his world was crumbling. He tried his damnedest to bring Johnny Gaudreau back. And, you're not always like, sometimes when a guy's got his mind made up, there's nothing you could do to influence him to come the other way. If he wanted to go back east and get a little bit closer to home, he was going to do it. He didn't end up going all the way home. And, maybe if he did go to the Devils, there would be a different fate for them in this playoffs. That was a good team this year.
Ooh, yeah.
You put Gaudreau in the mix, and that's an even better team.
It'd be scary.
They're very scary.
You put Gaudreau in that mix, do they get Timo Meier?
Right. Who knows? Probably not.
Right.
But,
so
what difference did Timo Meier really make in New Jersey?
Not much of a difference.
Right? Like,
maybe not on the score sheet, but teams still got a game plan for the guy named Timo Meier.
That's right. Absolutely. But to bring it back to Brad, he did everything he could with Gaudreau. Tkachuk, and then as if Flames fans couldn't get enough heartbreak, Tkachuk informs him that he doesn't want to sign his qualifying offer. And, the question is, do you enter a rebuild with trading arguably your best asset that left on your team? Or do you try to stay competitive? And that's never been the Calgary Flames way to enter a rebuild. Ownership has their toes in on everything. Maintaining competitive and trying to get playoff revenue is the name of the game if you are Murray Edwards and the ownership group of the Calgary Flames. So he was very much influenced by a lot of things to try to take the stay competitive route, which is why you see the Mackenzie Weegar, Cole Schwint, Jonathan Huberdeau in a first for Matthew Tkachuk in a sign and trade deal. So I urge Leaf fans who are maybe a little bit on the fence and maybe a little bit skeptical still to just do a little bit of digging. Go read articles from guys like Wes Gilbertson here in Calgary, or, even recently, Julian McKenzie did a really good piece, fellow SDPN guy, about that trade. And I just urge you to do a little bit of digging and listen to what this market was reporting during that time, because you'll get a way better and more clear understanding as to why Brad had to do the things he had to do and how he made the best out of a completely, crappy situation.
Auddie, we got a kind of a great comment from from our comment section on YouTube here.
Yeah.
His coaching hires. He's had some interesting ones like Bill Peters and Daryl Sutter. What's your opinion on his coaching hires?
Yeah, so that whole Bill Peters situation, that was prior to everything coming out, I thought was a pretty good hiring. I didn't think he was a bad coach, and quite frankly, if he was a better human being, I think he would have lasted a little bit longer behind the bench in Calgary. But the fact of the matter is, he's not. That's a tough situation to be in as the guy who hires him. And obviously he did the right thing by getting rid of him, and that was what it was. But coming into that, I mean, I can't really blame Brad for not knowing that was something that he had done in his past. I'm very thankful that Akeem Alou spoke out about that, and we got a better picture of who Bill Peters is and the kind of person that he is. Pretty solid coach. He did well in Calgary, and the guys seemed to like him. The Flames had an okay year that year. But yeah, that's a tough one. And you know, hindsight is what it is. You look back at it, you probably don't hire that guy knowing what you know now. I mean, I hope to God you don't hire that guy knowing what you know now.
That's it right there.
But you never know with this lovely sport that we watch and follow and
Oh, I
report
mean,
on.
everybody opining to get back Stan Bowman and Quinville as well. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm sorry to say, I'm glad that the Leafs were not holding out for those two gentlemen. So that's one
absolutely.
thing I'm very, very thankful for. I want to get back into the coaching stuff for just a
Yeah.
moment before we get too far away from the Tkachuk trade.
Yep.
I want to say, when your back is against a wall and you're able to pull that kind of trade off, pull in a 100-plus point guy, pull in a defenseman like Mackenzie Weegar, get a prospect, get a first-round pick, and then get the extensions done with those guys who are now with your team, because the initial trepidation from Flames fans was, oh my God, you traded for these guys and they're free agents in a year. So we're going to lose them too, but they got locked in. Now, one thing we all know, some players and some coaches are like oil and water, and we're talking about coaching now. Sutter and Huberdeau, it reminds me a lot of what Babcock tried to make the Leafs and put a lot of the offensive guys kind of to sleep.
Yep.
And it really doesn't help guys like Huberdeau or Kadri or Mangiapane. I might mess his name up, the bread man. But you get these guys done, you know, to get offensive going. And Sutter's more of a physical, grind it out. I want to win by a goal. This is how you play in the playoffs kind of stuff. And it doesn't translate for some players. And I think whoever, Conroy, I don't know if they've named a coach yet. I'm not sure.
Not yet, no.
But
they're still hunting.
I think a coach like Boudreau might get the most offense out of these guys and allow them a breath of fresh air to get them rolling. And I think that would help a guy like Huberdeau. And you might see a rebound to form instead of trying to jam that square peg into a round hole and really, you know, not help his game.
Yeah.
What do you do with players like that? You really have to allow them to be able to play up to their talents and put them in positions to succeed, not try to drill them into something different 5 to 10 years into their NHL career when they've already done it one way and been really successful. It's like saying Austin Matthews, hey, you're playing defense now, no more offense. Just pure D, you're on the third line, you're a checking line center, don't score goals. It won't work.
No, it never, and historically it never does. And you look at a guy like Huberdeau who has a couple outlier years. If you take away the outlier years, his defensive like analysis, or what am I trying to say? Metrics. That's the word.
We got it.
So far, it's been so long that I've been talking about hockey. I'm just like losing everything. But his defensive metrics are pretty steady. Like they're pretty even, Steven. Like you know what you're getting defensively from a guy like Jonathan Huberdeau. And it's not a really defensive player. And that's fine. Not every player has to be a Patrice Bergeron or, you know, an Elias Lindholm who's really improved his two-way game under Sutter. But, you know, it's a great point you bring up about how some systems don't work. Daryl is a very system-driven person. He had his system, and that was his system, and that was that no matter what. He had his guys who thrived in his system.
Yep.
You know, I think Johnny Gaudreau turned into a pretty good 200-foot player under Daryl Sutter. I think Matthew Tkachuk was a pretty good player under Daryl Sutter. Jonathan Huberdeau is not Matthew Tkachuk, and he's also not Johnny Gaudreau. So he's not going to thrive per se until you see it, which we saw, and it wasn't very friggin' good.
And also to talk about Sutter just a little bit too, to hype it up on the fact he doesn't really do players favors either.
No, not
like when you're talking about that rookie throughout the year, he had to pull out the sheet and he's like, "Oh, who is that? Oh, yeah. No, he can play 12 minutes."
The highest sought after prospect in the system for Calgary in his first NHL game, and that's the stunt you pull with the media.
But I mean, that goes around the room. And then guys start doing this with his volume level right there.
He lost the room. He completely lost the room. Craig Conroy said things like, you know, in exit interviews, they got a very clear understanding as to, or sorry, Don Maloney before they named Conroy GM was like, you know, we got a very clear picture here in our exit interviews as to what we need to do here. And if it's any indication, Murray Edwards was the reason that Daryl Sutter came back. It was, you know, he's pals, they're buddies, and Daryl has a pretty rich history with this organization as a GM and as a coach.
Let me blatantly ask you this question, and
Yeah.
I want a straight up answer.
Oh, I'll always give it to you.
If they fired Sutter throughout the season, if that was allowed to happen, would the Leafs even be having Brad Treliving as a GM right now?
No.
I think he'd still be in Calgary.
He would be in Calgary. There was such a separation between the coach and the general manager, to the point where, Brad would call up a guy like Jacob Pelletier, or I'm not sure how familiar you are with a guy by the name of Matthew Phillips, who just so happened to lead the AHL in scoring for 2 straight seasons.
I know the name.
And played, got called up at the same time as Pelletier, played in 1 game, and I think he logged 7 minutes, between 7 to 9 minutes he logged on the 4th line with a guy, Milan Lucic, and one of Trevor Lewis, Brett Ritchie, any one of those 4 guys that one of Daryl's guys, didn't do him any favors. So, there was such a separation there, and it was time to get things back on track. He made comments to the media about earlier in the year when Huberdeau left the ice, like he left the game and went down the tunnel and didn't come back. Went to the media and said, and his direct quote was, "Oh, I think he was taking a shit," when he was on the table getting work done because he had hurt himself and he'd been playing hurt. So he was on the table getting treatment. And
lost you there. 1 second.
There he is. There he is.
Okay, sorry, I hit my mic cord by mistake there. But yeah, that's how you're going to talk about your guys to the media, like your big acquisition,
your stars,
Huberdeau, your stars. It's downright disrespectful. And speaking to some of the guys who are in the room, some of the media guys, it was a very clear lapse, I guess, or between a separation, I guess you could say, between players to coach and coach to GM, and the common denominator was I can see Conrad's comment there, Auddie, and what did he say? I love Conrad's.
Like Hughes, name a more iconic duo.
It's funny if he, and Conrad, he's a good friend of mine, but very loyal Game Over Calgary viewer. There's been a couple times when I've knocked the old mic off, and it's been a problem. So, but anyways, besides my complete and utter incompetence, a lot of the things that Brad is being blamed for are Daryl Sutter problems, and people outside of the market just don't see it because they're obviously not as connected, which is fine. I did not follow the Leafs as closely as you guys have, and it's fair that some people don't follow the Flames as closely as they might.
See, that's why I had the opinion that I had today when I made my video, and just watching people be so upset about this hire, and I'm like, did you even pay attention to what happened, or are you just saying that he's gone because he messed up the trade and that's what you think?
Yeah.
Because that's not the disconnect. That's not the problem here. There was way more than that. And I really think, and what I said, I believe it to be true, that next season the Calgary Flames are going to have a hell of a year, and the flowers are going to be paid to Brad Treliving, much like Tkachuk did when he said about going to the finals, to the Stanley Cup finals. In his interview on the ice, he said, "I want to thank Brad Treliving for what he did for me," and gave him his flowers and shouted him out on national TV. Didn't need to do that, but he did it anyways to show what kind of a guy Brad Treliving was, because he probably knew all of the bleep he was taking.
Who do you know who he didn't thank?
Well, I wonder, Sutter?
A lot of the reasons why people didn't want to stay in Calgary had to do with the guy behind the bench and the team's reluctancy to get rid of him. And that had everything to do with ownership. Murray Edwards is very involved, as much as he's gone away and living in his Swiss lodge, wherever the heck he lives now. He's not in this country. He's very involved with stuff like that, and things like that have to, like firing him, have to go through, or firing coaches like Sutter has to go through him. And that's the reason why they get, boys, a lot of people don't remember this, but if you go back to October, the Calgary Flames gave Daryl Sutter an extension. He's going to be paid for 3 more seasons by the Calgary Flames. That's about, I think it was reported it's about $5 million. So he's going to make 15 schmilly to sit on his rear end and farm in Viking, Alberta, for the next 3 years because he's not going to go coach
and
anywhere
you know
else.
what? And there's another thing right there. A lot of people think that it was him who re-upped Sutter, right? Because he's a general manager. It's his coach. And it's not. Again, it goes back to the people that were the problem. Murray Edwards and his buddy, Mr. Sutter. So people don't, but if you're not in the market,
and that's
that connection.
That's why I don't want to poo-poo on too many people for not knowing, because it's just misinformation. It's just not being here and not maybe being as involved with the stuff that you've heard. Like, everybody saw when Gaudreau left, everybody saw the Tkachuk trade, but nobody really saw everything that led up to it, right? Unless you're in Calgary.
That's why I like being, kind of like a consumer of hockey. Every day, like just listening. And I'll shout them out, a really good podcast to listen to that drills down on a lot of things is the 32 Thoughts podcast.
Oh yeah.
And they really get down to the thoughts, not to mention, Game Over Flames. It's another one you should go listen to all the time too, with this man right here. Shout out Auddie James for jumping on the show if you're just tuning in. But I look at Brad Treliving, and now he's coming to the Leafs. Now the dichotomy is the same. You still have Brendan Shanahan. You still have Larry Tannenbaum. You still have a board. But from what I understand so far, and we'll get more into it tomorrow at around 11 a.m. Eastern when they introduce him as the general manager to the media. But I think, given his savvy with Calgary, I think he'll be able not only to handle the media, but to handle Shanahan and the board. And I'm sure those conversations were had, much like Kyle Dubas did, about being able to streamline information and make calls on the fly, which is something that Kyle Dubas wanted. They said no. He said, well, then give me more money to put up with that crap because it sucks that I got to go through 7 people to make a deal. Treliving went through the same thing.
He's very familiar with it.
He's very familiar with it, but I do think he wouldn't walk into another situation like that without having some clear cut in writing, not just handshake stuff, in writing guidelines of what he can and cannot do. And I'm sure if you're moving an Austin Matthews or a Mitch Marner, that runs through everyone because those are needle movers for the organization, not just on the ice, but off the ice with sponsorships and everything else. I get that. But when it comes to normal moves, I think he would say, hey, I want the autonomy to make these moves. I lived with this in Calgary for 9 years. I'm not bleeping repeating it again. So if you can't give me that, and that probably was why it hasn't been announced until tomorrow that he's actually going to be fully the GM. I know it was announced today, but press conference wise and stuff. I think he was stressing what he wanted. This is what I need. If you cannot give me this, I will not be your GM. I'm not going to be a lame duck guy that just says, yes, Brendan, we're okay with that, Brendan. We'll keep it moving, Brendan. No, that's not what he wants. He wants to build a winner here. His dad is damn excited. It's fun to watch. I want to ask you this. He's coming in. Do you think he keeps Sheldon Keefe? Because what I'm feeling is Sheldon Keefe may be sticking around here. He's not a bad coach, given whatever. And I know I'm about to get flamed for that. No pun intended for the Flames guy. But I know a lot of people don't like what Sheldon Keefe brings to the table. But he is one of the most winningest coaches at his age in Maple Leaf history and league history. So obviously he figures some things out, but there's more than he needs to do.
And respected by the guys too, right?
He is. He's respected. He hasn't lost that room.
Yeah.
You can see that those guys want to win for him. And you can see the emotion on the bench when they won that first round. Even he was jumping up and down like a kid on Christmas to get that win, to get that finally a series under our belt. But he comes in now. Brad Treliving's the GM. We're going to find out what happens. So do you think he keeps Keefe, or does Treliving bring in his own brand of guys? And if so, who would you think is a Treliving guy outside of Sheldon Keefe?
Good questions. Very loaded questions. Yeah, you put me under the microscope here. Look, I think Sheldon Keefe at a minimum starts the year with the Leafs. I think that Brad's priority right now is going to shift to the draft and probably focus on that guy who wears 34, and making him stick around long term, or what the plan is there. I think that there's other things on the pecking order for Brad Treliving than coming in and immediately cleaning house, and getting a new coaching staff. That said, not many GMs, and I put this out on Twitter too, not many GMs inherit the previous GM's coach. It's usually a, hey, you're our guy now, lead us to the promised land and bring in, your Brad Treliving guys. We saw it most recently in Vancouver. The changing of the guard there,
Yep.
and how Bruce, Boudreau was the guy, and that was the previous GM's hire, and the previous GM is obviously not there anymore. So they started out with Boudreau, and then they kind of give him the boot, which was completely
That was the worst handled situation
botched.
outside of the Sutter situation last year for the Flames. That was ridiculous. The way they treated him.
Horrible.
My God, man.
He knew it was coming. Yeah, the way that they handled that was just piss poor. But there's your example, right? A new GM comes in, doesn't keep the previous regime, and they move from there. Like I said, though, I think the way it's going to go is Sheldon and Co are going to, they're going to be the ones that started out, and if things go well, maybe he sticks around, maybe he develops a bit of a relationship with Tree, and things are good. Or if things go sideways, it's an easy, Brad doesn't owe it to this guy, it's not his guy anyways. Thank you, but no thank you, I'm gonna go find my guy. So that kind of answers the first part of your question. The second part of your question, who is a Brad Treliving guy? Honestly, I think that Sheldon Keefe could be a Treliving guy, which is why I don't think that it's going to be as bad as Leaf fans think. I truly think Sheldon could be a Brad guy. But again, like I said, it's an easy cop out if things don't go
well. Here's an easy way for Brad Treliving to go into this. So we've seen it with guys like Mike Yeo and others who join a bench as maybe the heir apparent to the guy who's currently coaching. There's always that thing. Hey, maybe if someone's nipping at your heels, it brings the best out of you.
Right.
So maybe Treliving goes and finds someone that he likes, because we know Spencer Carberry just left to be the head coach of the Washington Capitals. Tip of the cap to him. Hey, go get your money. But maybe you bring in someone to go on that bench that is a Brad Treliving guy, and have him there just underneath Sheldon Keefe with a little bit of, hey, if things don't go well, this might be our guy. Kind of what happened with Babcock and Keefe, where everybody kind of knew when Dubas took over, Keefe was coming up eventually.
So what I wonder, and this is just kind of me spitballing, this is the first time it's ever popped into my head. The Flames have a vacancy behind the bench right now, and it's been reported recently. Mark Savard has been involved. Yep. We had Gallant involved, and then obviously the internal candidates in Calgary, Ryan Huska, who's currently an assistant coach, previously head coach of the Stockton Heat, and Mitch Love, who's coach of the year, one of the best coaches in the AHL right now with the Calgary Wranglers, is supposed to be in the mix as well. My wondering is if perhaps one of those two is hired and the other isn't, if Brad tries to scoop one of them up to come and be that guy that you just talked about. Yep. You're not my guy right now, but you can be. Very familiar with both gentlemen. So maybe keep an eye out on that. Maybe this will be the turning point here, as we called it first, but I wouldn't be surprised because Brad's guys are his guys in Calgary right now, right? He's been with the organization for 9 years, previously an AGM in Arizona. So his guys are the guys that are here right now in Calgary. So I don't know. Maybe it just kind of dawned on me that could be a possibility.
That could be a very huge possibility. Maybe why the announcement hasn't happened yet. Maybe there's already those feelers out there like, hey, maybe come to Toronto with me if I go. Just hold off on doing anything. The other thing, the AGM situation here, we all know and hope that Brandon Pridham stays. The capologist wrote to CBA, so he knows lots of the loopholes. But a name that keeps being linked to Brad Treliving as maybe someone who might have came to Calgary if the means were there is Mike Fuda, a guy that was really well respected in his time with the LA Kings, was a bubbling AGM that a lot of people thought was going to get a job of his own to run a team of his own, may now be actually getting his fingertips in on the Maple Leafs with Brad Treliving. What would you think of that? Have you heard any of that yourself, or what would your perspective be there?
Yeah, honestly, I haven't heard too much about the AGM search. I've been really invested in this this coach search in Calgary. It's kind of been consuming my hockey timeline between that and the Stanley Cup. But yeah, I mean, Fuda's a guy whose name kind of always is out there, right? In AGM and possible GM roles. Just be thankful it's not guys like Peter Chiarelli who seem to be finding his way back into GM.
Listen,
hunts.
if John Ferguson Jr. can get another job in the NHL as a GM or an AGM, there's nobody really.
He's in Arizona?
I think he's in Arizona.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's the Oats.
Which is wild.
Yeah, they always rinse and repeat with these weird, like Bergevin too, like just weird hockey guys that somehow can't find their way out of the league, which is what it is, I guess. But
let me ask you this. Go ahead.
I was going to say, who do you want to see coach the Calgary Flames?
Well, the coach I wanted to see just got hired in Nashville, and that would have been Andrew Burnett. There's a history with Gallant and Huberdeau dating back to his time in junior. I think that would be good for Huberdeau, but the way he mismanaged the youth in New York scares me because I want to see a youth injection in Calgary, and it's long overdue. So I want it to be Mitch Love, the current Calgary Wranglers head coach. A lot of those guys that will be graduating to the Flames big club are going to be very familiar with him. He's going to be very familiar with them, going to be very easy to coach, and it's going to be very easy to win those guys. It's not very big shoes to fill, or I guess if in this neck of the country, it's not very big boots to fill from the predecessor in Sutter. So if you can just somehow get the room together, then you're already winning. But between Mitch Love and Ryan Huska, the current assistant coach / he used to coach Stockton, I'd like to see one of those two.
Not too bad of choices. So you've watched Brad Treliving. So Leaf fans really need to, I guess, embrace this because he's here now.
He's here.
This is where it's going to be. There's no reason in, just opining it. Just accept it, move forward. You've watched 9 years of Brad Treliving.
Yep.
He's made good signings. People keep bringing up the deals that he's signed. Give us some of your favorite deals he signed and maybe a trade or two that really maybe Leaf fans, because obviously a lot of them don't pay attention to another market, to get us excited, man, because obviously we're coming in a free agent period. There's going to be deals signed. There may have to be some decisions made on the core four and trades and stuff like that. We all know the Tkachuk trade. I still think the whole thing of that trade will pan out.
There's still lots of time. We're 1 year into it, man.
It's just the optics of this year of Tkachuk being in the Stanley Cup Finals, and everybody's like, see, I told you. But if you went into October and you said, what team won that trade? You would hands down say Calgary won that trade. Everybody
no one had the Flames missing the playoffs.
No, nobody had the Flames collapsing as hard as they did, or the decrease in Huberdeau's game as he makes NHL history for the largest decline year after year in points, which is not something you want to have. But
partially Sutter's fault.
A lot to do with Sutter. Sutter played him on his off wing for half the year, which really screwed with his game. Put him back there, and then threw Lucic up on his opposite wing. He played Lucic in the top six for. And I preface this every time I talk about Milan Lucic. There was a time and a place for him.
Yep.
Great guy, cup champion, was a big part of that team in Boston when they won. Like, remember how many power play goals that guy scored from standing in front of the net and just getting a good screen and tapping something in. He's just a big dude, and that's some hard miles on that body. But I always preface with it's not hate towards Lucic, it's hate towards his usage, and that roots back to Daryl. But yeah, that was a lot to do with Sutter. I think we see a much different Huberdeau. Even if he gets back to 90 points, I think Flames fans are happy with that. It makes that $10.5 million a lot more palatable. But But yeah, we'll see. Time will tell. But yeah, well, there's a lot of time to see where this trade finishes in the ranks of who won and who lost.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. So for just give us a couple off
Yeah.
the quick tops, couple signings, couple trades. Just give Leaf fans
Fans need
that
to be
need it some
excited.
hope.
Yeah. I guess because it's mostly filled with the negativity, like you said. It's
It's
hard to.
wild, man. You would think that they just hired somebody that sewered 17 teams and he's just coming in here to do the same. Like, I
Yeah.
don't understand it.
The problem is, James, that everyone's looking at all the negatives, like all his bad trades, all the bad signings. So that's why we need to hear like some underrated signings or trades that he made that no Leafs fan is talking about right now, if you can.
Oh yeah. Well, I think recently, like, I think the Blake Coleman signing, like, you're not you know what you're getting with Blake Coleman.
Yep.
You're getting a guy who, plays hard minutes in the middle six, is versatile, knows how to win. He's not going to light up the score sheet, and I don't think he ever really has lit up
Nope.
the score sheet. Like, he's always kind of been that serviceable journeyman who is going to, he comes in with his lunchbox and works hard and does all the little things right. But you get attached to that cap hit. I think he's making just shy or a little bit over $5 million. First
I
of
think
all,
it's 525. Yeah.
yeah. First of all, he's a UFA coming to a non-traditional, like a not huge market. You got to overpay a little bit. So market value, you're probably getting him under 5 anywhere, not named Calgary and like Arizona, right? Like places where you want to go play hockey. And Calgary's a beautiful place.
And
It's
he
a great place
just
to
won a
raise a
Stanley Cup too at that time.
Exactly. Just won a Stanley Cup. So I think that one was good. As for a trade, it's hard not to look at the Kachuk one, so I'll try not to. Bear with me. I'm actually going to pull up just so that I can refresh my memory a little bit here, and look back and see some of the ones that he did make. NHL Trade Tracker is a beauty, by the way. Shameless plug to them.
Oh yeah.
They have all the.
There's
all
no
the
reason
hookups.
not to plug them, man. Everybody goes there.
Yeah.
Everybody goes there.
A good, even like the Toffoli trade. Like,
Yep.
Toffoli had
There you go.
a whale of a season last year. Was a great pickup at the deadline. Actually, it was Valentine's Day, just a little bit before. But Tyler Pitlick, who wasn't working, Emil Heineman, a prospect who is who he is. Have you really even seen what Emil Heineman's up to right now? A 5th and a top 10 protected first. So you pretty much gave up a first round pick and a cap dump in Pitlick for Tyler Toffoli, who came in and made an impact right away. Loves the city, had a career year last year. What are we going to do with him now? We don't really know, but that's a good one. Vladar for a 3rd round pick to Boston. Like, very, very, like that's what I mean when I say Tree finds his guys, whether or not he gets them in the draft, because the Flames were big on him at the draft as well. When Vladar was drafted, but obviously he goes to Boston. He got picked before. He keeps tabs on his guys. He knows what he wants and he knows who he wants. He keeps tabs on them. He still gets his guy. He still gets his guy for a 3rd round pick. He notices that Boston might have a bit of a pickle here with Allmark. They got Swayman and they got Vladar. All right, here's the 3rd. We'll take Vladar off your hands. Let's see what else. Like,
I like the David Rittich for a 3rd round pick.
Yeah, Riddick was that was great, and now he's terrible. David Riddick had a bit of a Cinderella run with Calgary, and they were able to get a 3rd round pick, and that was a time when I think the Leafs were struggling between the pipes a little bit there, and they needed another goalie.
Yeah.
Going into the playoffs, and it was.
Let's ask you this one here.
Sure.
So obviously he's done work with the Calgary Flames, and you could see that he's made good deals.
Yeah.
And if anybody took the time just to look, you'd see some of these deals. I got a 2-parter for you.
Let's hear it.
Who is Brad Treliving? You're talking about Brad Treliving guys. Well, there's some on that roster right now. Who is Brad Treliving going to try to pry away from Craig Conroy and bring over to the Maple Leafs that you would consider an absolute Brad Treliving guy that would fit a need on the Toronto Maple Leafs?
I immediately think of a guy like Dylan Dubé. Dylan has, I don't want to say struggled, because I don't think that's the correct word to describe his trajectory in the NHL. I think he's taken a little bit of time to figure out what kind of player he is in today's NHL. And the same thing happened with Sam Bennett. Luckily, with Dylan, it's starting to become he's starting to figure out who he is with the Flames, opposed to Bennett finding out who he is with the Panthers.
Yep.
But Sam Bennett is a guy, Tree drafted him. I think that he would be a good middle of the lineup kind of guy in Toronto. He, again, a guy like Coleman who works hard. He's good in the room. I mean, I should preface this with, I hope he's not involved with the Team Canada. I don't think he is. I think we have a pretty clear understanding of who was, but he was the captain of that team. So until we know, we don't. But assuming he is a good dude and doesn't partake in that kind of stuff, then you'd be getting a guy who, just a serviceable, works hard in your middle six, goes to the dirty areas. He can find the puck, and a great dude in the community. He does so much work with groups in the community here in Calgary. And I think that's a Treliving guy. That's a Brad Treliving guy. A guy like Giordano, who you guys are seeing now in Toronto, is a Treliving guy, right? In Calgary, did so, obviously the captain here for a long time, did a lot in the community here. Worked hard. He was always the hardest working and the most fit guy. And I think those are the guys that Tree kind of gravitates towards. Those guys who make an effort. Giordano leaves, and now all of a sudden Dylan Dubé is the guy who's winning. In camp they do those like fitness tests. He's winning all the fitness tests. He's the hardest working guy. I think that he would be like the guy right now in Calgary to kind of be maybe pried away. Okay. And I would be sad to see him go. I like Dylan a lot.
Well, hopefully we get a little Dubé action over here. The other part I want to ask you, we have a lot of UFAs, and we have some guys that are about to be, shall we say, spicy with their trade demands and all the things that they have. I want to ask you, what are the odds that Brad Treliving can convince Austin Matthews and William Nylander to stay? And now I think that Brendan Shanahan, I said this already a couple times now, would have already made the phone calls to these guys and said, what are your feelings of hiring this guy? Mm-hmm. Where are you at with re-signing? I think Austin Matthews, for all the people talking he won't, I think he signs and stays a 4-year deal. I think he likes it in Toronto. But I want to ask you, can Brad Treliving get those two guys done, or is one of them going, in your honest feeling opinion?
I think he's going to do everything in his power for both of these guys to stay. I know I read somewhere today that he's apparently already talked to Matthews' agent, and that he's got a good working relationship with his agent already from previous clients. I don't exactly know on the Flames, or perhaps maybe it was Arizona, who those players are. But that's something that Brad is really, and people are going to throw recency bias at you. Oh, well, he wasn't able to do it with Gaudreau, wasn't able to do it with Chuck. Just take that out of your mind for a second and understand the situation was so different. It was so bizarre. It was so different. It wasn't regular negotiations whatsoever. But Brad is good he's a contracts guy. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to keep guys around. And I know people, you're going to tell me, oh, well, Gaudreau walked and Tkachuk walked. Again, I'm going to keep rinse and repeating. Different. Just go read up on it, and it'll be your best friend. You're going to sound like a genius when you talk to your friends about the Gaudreau and the Tkachuk situations. If you just read it a little bit, read it from the Calgary reporters. I promise you, it's going to be good information. But I think he's able to do it. I think he's able to do it. And a lot of people are already writing him off, and we're seeing it online of people who are, Brad's not going to be able to do it, and Brad wasn't my guy, and Leaf fans are all depressed about Brad being here, and I think he can do it. I think he can do it. I don't know how else to put it other than just like
give him a chance.
Let him get a foot in the door. Like, I'm going to tell you right now, he's going to talk to the media tomorrow, and you guys are going to love him. You're going to love him. Like, listen to Flames fans. Just go on Twitter and see how many Leaf fans are chirping back at, or sorry, listen to Flame fans are chirping back at Leaf fans who are already writing him off. It just goes to show you how well respected this guy is. No GM is perfect.
Nope,
Not one single GM is perfect. Brad had some great moments. He had some really not great moments. James Neal. But for God's sake, give him a chance. He's a great human being. And I just really think that if you give him the chance to try, he wants to win a cup. He's not going to come in here and he's not going to pull he's not going to pull a Hextall in Pittsburgh and just sabotage from within.
Yep.
Right? He's not going to do that. He's going to come in and he's going to genuinely try to win Leaf fans. It's going to be hard for me not to say Flames fans. Leaf fans over. And I just urge people to give him a chance. Read up on him. See the stuff he does in the community. How good of a dude he is. I know people look past that because it's a results-based business, and I get that. But just think about the guy. He's a good dude. He's going to be good. I think you guys are in good hands with Tree at the helm. And I know that was a bit of a ramble sesh there, but I just got to get that off my chest, man.
Chills.
It's I hope so.
Yeah.
It's good to hear those things though from someone who's been in that kind of market and been around the person that is now coming over to our favorite team to run it. The last question I have for you before we let you go tonight, my friend.
Sure.
The core four is a big topic in Toronto. Would you, in your opinion, blow it up? Blow that up. There's so many people that say blow it up, but there's a lot of people that are close to the game, like the Wayne Gretzky's, the Don Cherries. I know we don't like him so much because of what he said, but he's known hockey. He's been around hockey. Mm-hmm. Even we've had some on this show talk about the fact that maybe you shouldn't blow it up because maybe they are just that close and a couple here and there's, and next thing you know, you're the next story like the Tampa Bay Lightning who kept their core, or the Colorado Avalanche, or the Detroit Red Wings. Go down the list, the Washington Capitals, same thing. Rinse and repeat. This could happen here. What would you do? Would you blow it up or keep it?
You build around it. That's the logical thing, right? You don't trade guys like that and get better. Is kind of the thought process I have. Now, the greedy side of me is telling you to send William Nylander home and follow in his father's footsteps. Come to Calgary. That's what I'm saying, as the greedy side of me would indicate. But logically, those four guys, you got to win with those guys. You've committed to Tavares.
Yep.
You've drafted, developed, and grown with Nylander, with Marner, with Matthews.
Yep.
Homegrown products, right? Not geographically, but homegrown
I know
within your organization. I mean, homegrown for Marner, I guess you could say. But like, true. Yeah, you want to keep those guys, and you want to win with those guys, and the fans want you to win with those guys. So, and that's where I think Brad is going to shine. Is the pieces are there. Like, he probably looked at this and said, "This is light work." You're telling me, like, I mean, aside from maybe the contract stuff, but do you get what I'm saying? Yeah. This is light work. The guys are already here. We just got to build around it, right? We're not far off.
You know what? Listening to you tonight, it seems like it's those kind of players that build around that he knows how to get, the Toffoli's, the Colemans.
The Toffoli's, I mean, as much as it didn't work in Calgary, it was what it should have. Calle Yarncroke, like he goes out and he gets those guys that you build.
Worked well in Toronto.
Exactly. And look who Yarncroke was playing under when he came to Calgary. That guy that we
There's a common theme here.
Yeah, he's the guy who's probably not listening to this out on his Kubota right now, just farming away in Alberta. But I truly think, and it's no knock at Dubas, because I think Dubas is great, and I think he's going to shine wherever he goes. And to answer Pete's question earlier, I hope he goes to Pittsburgh because that's where my true allegiance is. If you can see,
I can see it. I can
the
see it.
Penguins jerseys hiding. We'll get into that as we wrap up, I'm sure. But Brad's going to be just fine. You guys aren't getting a Chiarelli. You're not getting a Bergevin. You're not getting a Bowman. You're getting a good dude and a guy who knows how to find those pieces, knows how to build around. And I just say, give him a shot. I'm excited to
I'm
see what
already
he
in
can do
that
for you
boat, man.
guys.
So
I'm in it.
you're just echoing what I'm saying.
Excited.
Yeah, I want to see what he can do for you guys because my closet Leafs fandom is real now because of this last playoff run. So
Yeah.
I want to see and the storylines like I want to see Gio get a cup. I want to see Brody get a cup. I want to see Yarncroke get
I got
a
a
cup.
TJ Brody jersey. I'm about the only guy in Ontario with a TJ Brody jersey. I love him, man. He's so good.
Yeah, and it's just there's a lot of common themes there between these two teams. So I want to see you guys do well. And I think Brad's gonna be the guy that kind of helps you get there.
Yeah. One last question though,
Yes.
Auddie. Like, you're an Ontario boy.
Mhm.
What made you decide to cheer for the Calgary Flames?
So I'm from this lovely place called Guelph, Ontario, which I'm sure you guys know all too well.
Yep.
I lived there for the better part of my life, and being surrounded by so many great Leaf fans and so much influence for Toronto, I decided, how can I cheer for the Toronto Maple Leafs when everybody else does? So, 5-year-old Auddie went up to his dad's computer and booted up NHL 99 as one does.
Oh, mic problems again.
I hit the cord again.
Don't worry. It's only twice tonight. That's.
I know. If I can knock that down, there we go. Now I'm back on my mic. Okay. Booted up NHL 99 on his dad's computer, as one does, and just was enamored with this guy named Mario Lemieux, who was just one of the best players in the game and loved the RoboPen jersey. So 5-year-old Auddie said, I'm a Pittsburgh Penguins fan. So he cheered for the Penguins, and I'm telling you the story as if it's like some great. It's really nothing great.
There's a book to be had about this. Let's go.
He's cheering for the Penguins. They get Crosby. They get Malkin. Let's go. But then Auddie gets a PS2, and he boots up NHL 06. And who's one of the best players in that game? None other than Jerome Arthur Lee Tig Jr. Elvis Iginla. And just a beast. And the Blasty jerseys were iconic. And, there's guys like guys on that team, Rhett Warner, who was a beast in the game. But, we love Rhett in this market, but he wasn't anything special. Beast in the game. So I started playing this Calgary. I'm like, you know what? This is a great second team. You got to have a Canadian team if you're Canadian. And then the opportunity came to move out to Calgary. So I said, yeah, let's do it. And let's start this media thing while we're at it. So that's kind of how the whole thing came to be in a very long and winded way of explaining it.
No, it's amazing, man. It's your origin story.
That's it. Everybody knows it now. Yeah.
It's out there, man. It was the Pens. Hey, listen, you couldn't go wrong with the Pens, Mario, Crosby, Malkin. Great players to want to follow. Yep. And then Jerome Iginla. You can't go wrong that way either. Then you move to the market. So you are allowed to be absorbed by it. I mean, I moved out. So I moved from Ontario to the Eastern Canada, to Halifax. Yeah. And it is Boston. It is Montreal here. Being a Leaf fan is a sore thumb.
Oh, yeah.
I've never changed my allegiance. But there were times where I was tempted, especially from 05 all the way basically to 16, because no one really counts 13. So it's really, really was really trying time, shall we say.
I know it all too well. Leafs fans in my family and all my buddies back in Guelph, Leaf fans. So I'm well versed in Leafland.
Well, Auddie, I want to thank you very much. This has been a little bit of a long time coming.
Yeah, it has. I'm sorry, but I'm glad we did it.
It's amazing we finally got her done.
Of course.
I want to get you on again throughout the summer once the moves and all the shaking finishes up.
Yep.
If you're up for that, we'd love to have you back on and crap a couple whole ones and have some fun.
Let's do it. I'm in.
All right. Well, Leafs Nation, Flames Nation as well. This right here is Offside Hockey Talk, where the Maple Leafs and hockey come to talk.